This video should be required viewing for people wanting to retire before age 55. I'm a certified financial planner that helps people retire early, and my firm has been helping people all over the US successfully retire over the past 2 decades, and we have over $300 million in assets under our care. And these are some of the most important lessons and ideas that I've learned from those that have retired early, and I think you'll find these valuable and help you be better prepared to retire early without having some of the biggest and most common regrets I commonly hear. When it comes to retiring before 55, I found this first lesson to be one of the hardest problems that really nobody talks about. There's a lot of fear about running out of money in retirement, and for good reason. For some people, that's a valid concern. But what might surprise you is that for many people, the bigger problem isn't spending too much, it's spending too little. When you think of retirement, many people imagine the golden years, a time to enjoy all the fruits of several decades of really hard work. You travel, you upgrade your house, you finally enjoy some of the things you've been pushing off for a long time, and even pursuing lifelong dreams and charities. And it happened successfully because they had a plan in place to make that transition, and it really wasn't an issue. But here's the thing, and I know some of you watching this may relate to this. You might find yourself in a very different camp. Maybe you're someone who feels emotionally stuck when it comes to spending. You're hesitant to go beyond the basics, even when you know deep down that you've saved enough to afford it. This is especially common among those who've worked super hard, saved diligently, and they've been frugal for decades. But the problem is that those same habits that allow you to be in a position to retire early, right? Saving aggressively, being frugal, staying disciplined, might actually start to work against you in retirement. I can't tell you how many times I've had to tell my clients, hey, you need to spend more or you're going to end up with millions and millions of unspent dollars by the end of your life. In fact, a recent study found that retirees on average spend only 60 to 80% of what they could afford to spend, even as their nest egg continues to grow. This means that you're more likely to end up leaving behind far more money than you ever even intended. Money that could have been used to create more joy, experiences, and meaning during your lifetime. So here's the first thing that you need to know. If you're hardwired to be a saver, you need to be prepared for the mental shift that comes with retirement. And the lesson is that without a plan in place, it's incredibly difficult to break free from those lifelong habits. But with the right strategy, you can confidently spend on the things that matter most to you without guilt, hesitation, or fear that you're doing something wrong. So we just talked about how savers can struggle to shift their mindset in retirement, sometimes to the point where they don't fully enjoy what they've actually worked so hard for. But there's another side of the coin, and it's just as dangerous. Some people swing the other way. They don't struggle to spend, but they can't bring themselves to stop working or stop saving. And it's a trap that can rob you of the freedom and joy retirement is meant to provide, always feeling like you need more. Some people become so focused on building wealth that they never feel ready to stop. I've seen clients delay retirement even when they're financially secure because they just think, you know what, one more year or one more bonus or one more milestone and I'll finally be ready. And the goalposts honestly just continue to move and move. And the problem is they're right. You could save more and your plan's going to look a lot better. You could work one more year. Yes, your plan's going to look better. But if you keep moving those goalposts, you'll never feel like you've arrived, and you risk missing out on some of the experiences and joy that make life meaningful. And here's a drawing image that would wake you up as it did when I first saw it. This is 90 years of the human life. If you're someone that's almost 55, that means that you're about 60% filled in. Now, this isn't meant to be depressing. It's a reminder that your time is finite. Retirement isn't necessarily the answer, of course, to everything. But if continuing to work or saving more and more is holding you back from living the life you want with the time you have left, it's worth asking, have you fallen into this trap? At the end of the day, wealth is a tool. It's not the end goal. The question isn't, do I have enough, but what kind of a life do I want to live? And if you focus on what will bring you joy, purpose, and meaning, and let your money work as a tool to support that vision, when you shift your mindset to this, it becomes a lot easier to know when you've arrived and finally enjoy what you've built. But let's say you've broken free of that mindset, you're ready to retire, and you feel confident that you've saved enough. There's another huge step and a common trap that many people look back on and they say, hey man, I wish I was a little bit more proactive on it. And that was because they ignored tax planning. For most people, tax planning feels like something that only business owners or real estate investors really need to worry about. This doesn't apply to me. And honestly, I get it. The tax code is definitely designed and stacked in favor of business owners and real estate investors. But there's something that a lot of people realize only years later and not many people realized before. And that's when you retire, especially retire early, there's a huge window of different planning opportunities. And ignoring them could cost you tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. And if we take tax gain harvesting, for example, most retirees don't know that long-term capital gains can be taxed at 0% if your taxable income stays below a certain threshold. So imagine you've retired, you're married, you're filing jointly, and you're living on $120,000 per year. By strategically pulling enough from your IRA, offset by the standard deduction, and then the rest of your money from a brokerage account, where most of the income is long-term capital gains, you've held investments for longer than a year, you could end up paying $0 in federal taxes on your withdrawals. That's right, $120,000 of income tax-free. That's just one example of a tax planning opportunity. The second one, of course, is the retirement tax valley. Those early years when your tax rate is likely at its lowest, and then you can implement Roth conversions, which could be a huge lever, especially if you have a lot of money in those pre-tax accounts. Paying a little tax now to avoid massive tax bills later when RMDs, required minimum distributions, kick in and drive up your tax rate. But without this strategy, you can end up paying higher Medicare premiums, more your Social Security become taxable. All these different things are opportunities when you do retire that people don't often recognize until it's too late. And thirdly, for early retirees, is optimizing your income for health insurance, right? If you are someone that retires early, I've chatted with a lot of people in this situation, they may have millions of dollars saved, but they're only paying like $100 or $200 a month in insurance premiums because we've been able to structure their income to qualify for those subsidies. I just think before you do retire early, don't let taxes be that black hole that eats away at your retirement savings, because you will regret looking back later on in life in the fact that you did nothing. And by being proactive in terms of paying less in tax, of course, that means you get to keep more money of what you saved, which means your money goes towards the life you've dreamed of, which means you're not giving the IRS a tip. Okay, so another thing you need to know about, another costly mistake that I see for those that want to retire before 55 is treating their portfolio and their financial plan as two separate things, right? When people look back and they realize they failed to align their portfolio with what their retirement actually looks like, their retirement needs, because those are going to evolve over time. You've all heard of the 4% rule. If you invest your portfolio 50% US stock, 50% bonds, and you withdraw 4% in the first year retirement, over the course of your lifetime, that should give you a high probability of your money lasting over 30 years. It sounds pretty simple, but the reality is that life isn't that straightforward. In reality, your income needs and expenses in retirement are anything but static. For example, you might retire at 55, but delay taking Social Security until 67 or 70. That means for the first 15 years or so, your portfolio is going to cover the bulk of your income. And then once Social Security kicks in, your portfolio takes on a lot smaller of a role. Adding in things like mortgages going away, traveling less, increasing medical costs later, it's clear that a one-size-fits-all portfolio and withdrawal strategy just doesn't work. Perhaps you want to consider breaking your portfolio into phases that align with your retirement timeline. For example, let's say phase 1, the first 5 years of retirement, you're likely going to need the most amount of income. Say you need $120,000 annually, you pull that from your portfolio each year, and naturally that might be a higher withdrawal rate than the 4% rule initially, but it's temporary because, again, your expenses are going to drop over time. To fund this phase, you want to make sure you have enough in those conservative investments in those early years, though you don't have to worry too much about market volatility. And then there's the next phase. Perhaps you're going through this period where, hey, my mortgage is finally paid off. Now, what does that mean? That means that the income you need from the portfolio is not the same. So let's say now your mortgage is paid off. Now you only need $90,000 a year from the portfolio. You can afford to start shifting part of your portfolio to these moderately conservative investments, allowing for some growth while ensuring the funds are ready again when you need them. And then there's the third phase where your portfolio might look completely different at this point, right? Right now, expenses have stabilized. Perhaps your $90,000 annually is now made up by $40,000 of Social Security and only $50,000 from the portfolio. This phase is where you can take a lot more long-term growth in terms of your investment approach, and you have all that time to compound because you need less income from it. And by aligning your portfolio with these phases, you can spend more in the early years of retirement when you're active and enjoying life, and then having your later years more secure. It's not about sticking rigidly to a 4% withdrawal rate. It's about managing cash flow, managing your portfolio dynamically based on your life, not based on a 60-40 or a 70-30 portfolio or whatever you read online. That's not the goal. The goal is to have a withdrawal strategy. Having an actual withdrawal strategy will actually factor in taxes, your unique situation, cash flows, and not doing this over the span of 30 years could be pretty costly to your retirement. Okay, so the next one's gonna be really practical if you want to retire before 55. This is something that you really need to understand, and it's something that is really common for those that want to retire in this age group, and I call it the health insurance gap, or otherwise known as the age between retiring early and when you're eligible for Medicare. Now, you may have ample assets and you may just not want to work anymore, but the trick is knowing what you're going to do for health insurance between now and Medicare and knowing the best option for you and your family. And there's an interesting statistic to highlight in terms of health insurance costs before Medicare for those that are typically seniors on a silver health insurance plan. They'll pay about $1,200 a month, which adds up to about $14,000 to $15,000 per year annually. Now, over the course of a 5-year period, that could add up to a lot over a long period of time before you're actually Medicare eligible. And of course, this figure can really depend on where you are at locationally, but it's really eye-opening to understand what the cost of health insurance is compared to what you are paying when you're working, especially if you're someone that retires early and you need income and you're also ineligible for subsidies, right? So the next thing you need to be aware of is if you retire early is a more obvious one, but it's the lesson to not just wing it when it comes to your health insurance. There are also other options other than marketplace insurance, but you should really run the numbers for yourself to find a great health insurance plan. I know someone whose mom was on a Christian cost-sharing plan and had over $100,000 surgery that was completely paid for. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. Do your research. I've seen clients with millions of dollars just spend $100 or so in health insurance per month because of all the great tax planning that they can implement in terms of subsidies. Okay, so let's talk about the last and probably the most important thing that maybe you'll learn from this video and why I say this is required viewing, because when I learned about this, it really changed my perspective. Because when most people imagine retiring before 55 or just retirement in general, you think of a laundry list of activities like travel, playing more golf, fishing, spending time with children, grandchildren. But what if that list does not cover the full picture? The reality is that retirement is not just about kicking your feet up on a beach for the rest of your life. Those are activities that I've been heard called excessive leisure. After sleeping, eating, grooming, and taking care of all the other daily necessities, over the average day, you'll have about 14 hours to fill, which equates to about 5,110 hours in a year or 153,300 hours over a potential 30-year retirement. Now, these activities are fine. There's nothing wrong with them, but they also could be done to excess. I was talking with a client who was extremely happy to retire and play unlimited rounds of golf, but they noticed that golf started to become kind of like their full-time jobs. So their encouragement, they eventually figured this out, but their encouragement was to ask any other retiree was, how are you going to spend your time in terms of bringing meaning and purpose into your life? One of the hardest questions to ask yourself is, what happens if you wake up one morning, after morning, and you have ample money, but no purpose, right? Boredom, loss of energy, physical and mental deterioration, restlessness, destructive behavior, drinking to excess sometimes, filing for divorce in search of something new are all potential results, but not positive outcomes. The best piece of advice I've heard is not to retire from something, but to retire to something. So these are some amazing questions to help you really dream and understand how to know if you're ready. Number one, what activities, paid or unpaid, currently make me feel good? The second one is, what activities, paid or unpaid, currently give me a sense of meaning and purpose? And the third one is, what are some of the things that you would like to accomplish in the future? And number four, think back over your life. What accomplishments have given you the greatest intrinsic rewards? And why do you think that might be the case? So anyway, I hope you found this video helpful. If you're wondering if you're in a position to retire, even though you may not even feel like it, you should definitely check this video out right here to see how you compare. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I'll catch you guys on the next one.